This cold and stormy night deep in the woodland of Northumberland, a dishevelled man is currently running for his life. The tumultuous sound of his pursuers meld with the torrential rain as he shudders from each whimpering breath. His crimes and his name are unknown, but with each pounding step he slowly begins to defile the soil and corrupt the land. The people of Alnwick are blissfully unaware of the grotesque monstrosity that will soon be upon them, and cast their sleepy little village into utter bleakness. After countless miles of being on the run, leaving his past beyond the pines and his body pushed to its limits, he finally catches a glimpse of his destination cutting through the trees, his true bastion of safety, Alnwick Castle. Making his way to the portcullis, he pleads to the guards to be let through, his pursuers getting ever closer with each passing second. Thankfully, however, the Lord, Eustace de Vesci, just so happens to be a close friend of the stranger and tells his garrison to open the gate and get the man to safety. With blissful ignorance, the Lord has just condemned the residents of his vast estate to a horrifying plague. This is the story of the Alnwick Vampire. After his harrowing escape from the law, the stranger, bruised and beaten, tries his best to wrap his wounds in a small secluded chamber deep within the castle. As he cleans and bandages the many contusions upon his body by candlelight, the sweet coppery smell of blood emanating from his person and the weeping cuts staining the wood below, the Lord enters the chamber with a rather tempting proposition. If his friend agrees to become a member of his staff and attend to whatever duties are asked of him around the grand estate, whether that be cooking, cleaning, or even stabling the horses, the Lord shall give him a warm bed, hot food, but most importantly, a safe haven from his pursuers. Considering his only other option is to step beyond the threshold and take a chance with the baying wolves, but instead of gnashing teeth rushing for his throat it's sharp and still, the stranger happily accepts the gracious offer, and after a few days' bed rest, slowly settles into his new life. A few years later in the village market, the hustle and bustle of the peasants echo through the stalls, a reverberation of joyous laughter and intense bartering, as each trader promises they have the highest quality goods available and the townsfolk would be foolish to pass up on such bargains. With the smell of fresh food and the tanning of leather, the villagers are on the hunt for produce, livestock and grain to feed their growing families. But one thing that is always given away for free by the traders is, of course, rumours, as many are hearing the whispers about the man with a shadowy past. In the intervening years, the man has managed to not only find himself a lovely wife, but has also moved out of the small chamber in the castle and into a rather quaint, if not isolated, property on the outskirts of the village. His life since arriving in Alnwick has been relatively calm and peaceful. Yet when he lays his head down to sleep, his dreams are still nightmare-infested of that horrific night, and his near dance with death. With every new start, there are always certain challenges one must face, and the stranger's new life is no different. Since arriving in Alnwick, he hasn't always been given a warm welcome. Some of the residents sneer and even look upon him with intense suspicion for being what they class as an outsider, and due to his suspected previous criminal activity, some even consider him a bad omen for their sleepy little village. The local priest has been one of many to criticize him for not coming to church and living a hedonistic lifestyle. One could argue after managing to start anew and in turn becoming a much kinder and thoughtful person, a little self-indulgence is the least of the town's concerns. But sadly, that just isn't the case, as the man is ridiculed on a near daily basis. But the tale that is currently being whispered in the tavern isn't entirely about the man himself, but instead, it's about his wife, which if the villagers are to be believed, is having a passionate affair with a local youth. Some suggest it's the young and strong son of the local blacksmith, while others hint at it possibly being the butcher's aide. It is not known how long the supposed affair has been going on, but considering that some of the villagers have noticed the young man enter the house of the stranger at late hours, and the fact the woman even married the man to begin with, has tainted her already little reputation. As the evening continues, someone approaches the stranger, and most likely a little drunk, dares to mock him to his face. Calling him a godless heathen who cannot satisfy his wife, the raucous laughter quickly comes to an end as he finally has enough of the town's poisonous perception of him, and unleashes a violence of a man akin to such ways. For a second, the villagers feel as if they finally get a glimpse of his past as the snapping of cartilage and breaking of bone reverberates off the tavern walls, and claret covers the floor. This isn't the first time he has shown his violent streak. While working in the castle, the stranger has on many occasions threatened his fellow staff for neglecting their duties, even going so far to punish them himself by refusing their pay or even their food, and locking them away in their quarters for days. The Lord is well aware of the abuse taking place, but by having a ruthless bulldog rule over his staff, he sees the benefits. The castle is cleaner and a more productive unit as a whole, and if the staff have fear in their eyes, well, so be it. It's from these actions that the rumours of the man's past began to trickle down into the village. After beating the man beyond recognition, he steps outside into the downpour, the near torrential rain attempting to extinguish his still burning rage, the smell of wet mud and sour sweat presenting itself like a foul unwanted gift. He begins his short journey back home with a wounded hand speckled with blood, a perfect mosaic of sudden violence, and surely the odd broken knuckle. Passing the once busy market, now settling into peaceful serenity, the foot traffic reduced to a single man full of contempt and somewhat wounded pride, he heads down the thoroughfare smelling the strong fragrance of cooking meat and family settling in for the long night. A family. Something he may never get the chance to have if the rumours are true. Finally making it back home, his body tired and weary, his mind racing with paranoia, he wishes to confront his wife as soon as he steps through the door. However, when he steps beyond the threshold, he changes his course of action. If his wife is truly being unfaithful and having this illicit affair, then he'd rather catch her in the act and rain down his wrath upon her and her supposed lover. The next morning, he explains how the Lord is sending him away for a few days and she'll be alone to take care of the house. Grabbing a satchel of provisions and saying goodbye, he leaves Alnwick on foot and heads back into the forest where his story began. Moving deep into the wilderness, the trees surrounding him like gods of a forgotten age, he sets up a small camp and waits until nightfall, the crackling fire reigniting the burning hatred in his heart for the village and all who occupy it. Underneath a cloud-forsaken sky, the only light being the waxing gibbous moon and pinprick of stars, he sneaks back to the house and climbs upon the roof. While laying atop the thatching, slowly slicing a hole so he can observe, he watches as his wife sneaks the youth into the house, and he witnesses as she defiles the bed. Their bed, right before his eyes. As the two lovers embrace, the seething hatred encompassing his very being, his perception clouds. Throwing caution to the wind, he stands up, and before he can react, the roof gives way and he is sent sprawling below. The weightless seconds seem to last hours. Upon crashing to the floor beside the bed, his body twisted and broken, he curses his wife and swears he'll find a way to punish her. During the commotion and screams of not only anger but pure agony from the man, the youth escapes the house and flees into the night. Over the next few days and riddled with guilt, his wife attends to his bedside to where he is now bound. Consumed by utter contempt and rage, but his every waking moment filled with a gut-wrenching pain, the man realizes he will never walk again. As the days continue to pass, his body is seized by a great fever brought on by his injuries. The priest is called upon and urges the man to make a confession in order to save his soul. However, finding hypocrisy in the priest's now kind bedside manner, the man merely spits in his face and curses him with his final breath. With a sharp intake of air and seizing of his body, the stranger dies in absolute agony. Deciding the man had gone through enough ridicule and torture and most likely feeling guilt in his part of the condemnation, the priest out of good faith decides to give him a full Christian burial. But it isn't enough to save the village from what is coming. According to the legend, when the man falls into the eternal slumber, he doesn't find tranquility beyond the veil. Opening his eyes, he is faced with a nightmarish and depraved landscape of near biblical proportions. The screaming souls of the lost, pleading and begging for mercy from a God who has truly forsaken them. Now at the precipice of madness, a thick miasma of decay corrupts his every sense as a smell of fetid meat and burnt flesh eats away at him to his very core. As he is devoured by the unbroken abyss, lost in the far-reaching lands of degradation, he drops to his knees and at the feet of an amalgamation of flesh. An obelisk of 1,000 faces, each with twisted cartilage and sinew, that's now gazing upon this husk of a man. Cowering in utter terror, the man pleads with the ghoulish monstrosity in exchange for what is left of his soul. All the stranger asks for in return is revenge. Many moons have passed since the man's burial, and his grave, much like himself before his death, has been avoided and even forgotten. The village has returned to some form of normalcy after the events concerning the accident. The market once again is a hive of activity as the traders continue to bellow about their goods, the tavern is full of the local patrons enjoying the ale and festivities, and the church is full of its devout followers hanging on to every word spoken by their local chaplain. But it doesn't take long for something to catch the villagers' attention. With each passing night, the streets and thoroughfare begin to fill with a miasma of fetid waste that hangs in the air like a whore's day-old perfume. Over the next few days, many residents begin to fall ill from the stench, and plague-like symptoms begin to appear upon the bodies of the affected. With great effort, the village's medicine man uses many tonics and tinctures he can in an attempt to heal the sick, but his actions are utterly fruitless. A town meeting is called at the local tavern where one of the older locals makes it known that during one of his late evening strolls as the sun slept behind the hills, he passed by a hooded figure from whom he believes the foul miasma was emanating from. He goes on to explain how the bizarre spectre seemed to be disfigured by some strange ailment, his face sunken and cadaverous, with a mouth stained crimson and a very prominent hunchback causing him to lurch like a wounded animal before sneaking away into the black. As the meeting continues and they discuss ways to protect themselves from the epidemic and the potential threat of the strange spectre, suddenly the old man doubles over and falls into a coughing fit, and to the dismay of the many onlookers, he spews blood all over the tavern floor. His two sons quickly rush to his side and escort him out of the building, but it comes to their attention that he is running a severe fever. During the walk through the village, the signs of the infestation become apparent as many of the houses have been boarded up and abandoned. The once small village teeming with life seems to have been cast into a Cimmerian shade, and in a matter of days it went from a growing village with high prospects to a diseased, riddled corpse, the carrion being picked away by some predator. But what the locals haven't seemed to notice due to so many vacant properties is that some of the residents and even the bodies of those who have perished have seemed to have vanished without a trace. With each passing day, the priest is called upon time and again by the locals who are now in a vice-like grip of utter terror. Their resolve utterly shattered by the deaths of their sons, daughters, husbands, and wives. Slowly, each visit begins to traumatize the village chaplain and confirms the fact that this is no ordinary plague, as he is shocked to find how disfigured the victims are. Their emaciated bodies being utterly destroyed as the infection eats away at their flesh, liquefying their muscles and even causing their hands and feet to rot away. The family members become so distraught at the faces of the dying, a grotesque caricature of what they once were, as the bulbous cysts protrude from once healthy skin that pulse and ooze with a thick viscous fluid, and their tongues reduce to mush. Sometime after, one of the sons rushes to call upon the priest. With people dying on a near daily basis, the clergyman is being pushed beyond his limits. Upon entering the home of the old man, he discovers him restless and thrashing. His body is in the throes of a violent fever. He tells the two brothers that their father doesn't have long for this world and they should prepare for the worst. With great sorrow, placing a blanket upon his frail figure, the two young men watch as their father closes his eyes and with a sharp intake of breath, convulses and with a pitiful moan, perishes in the dwindling light. With a troubled brow and heavy heart, the priest performs the final rites and makes the sorrowful walk back through the village, witnessing the desolation of his parish. Upon making it to the church, he is visited by a sight of something utterly appalling. The carrion of the dead, snaking through the grass like bulbous fat worms, gorged in blood. The graves of the people, his flock, mutilated and eviscerated, a maddening depiction of violence and depravity. He feels a terror beyond any human comprehension, as he now understands there is something foul preying on the residents. And not too far away, in the bowels of a crypt, that thing feeds. Stripping muscle from bone and feasting upon the putrid flesh, it greedily consumes the dead. However, its appetite for fresh meat is growing stronger. It's managed to stay hidden, clouded by the plague it brought from the depths. However, its recent feast was messy, but its hunger is insatiable. Upon seeing the sight of blood, it strips away its previous humanity and turns into a wild beast. The stranger knows what he has become, his wish fulfilled. He is something clandestinely evil, a revenant. With hammer and nails, the villagers board up their homes, arming themselves with whatever tools are available in a vague attempt to protect their children. As the long hours pass, all crowding around the slowly dimming candlelight, the sound of scratching, tearing and screaming of those risking their lives fleeing into the black thunder throughout the night. But their efforts are fruitless, for in these dark hours, the creature steps forth from its lair and eviscerates any who dare tread into its hunting ground. And if the beast is determined enough, their measly wooden doors and windows will not stop its wrath. Now not seeming to hide its presence, it attacks each night with utter incredulity, carving, maiming and killing any who cross its path, whereupon it drags them to the bowels of its lair to tear flesh from bone. And like a starving dog, it gorges itself on the remains. With the light of first dawn shining into their bleary eyes, their bones cold and bodies weary from sleepless nights, the survivors are greeted with the hideous sight of the creature's hunt. The thoroughfare is now swamped in blood, with the pungent smell overpowering their senses, and many of the homes laid bare with its previous occupants gutted on the streets. Without a moment to spare, many gather what little provisions they have left, for the mornings are now a festival of fear. With either horse and cart or on foot, many attempt to flee, their destinations unknown, for the pandemonium has reduced the village to a shivering wreck. But a few remain behind, refusing to give up their lives to some hideous beast. With nowhere else to turn, the local chaplain demands that the Lord should form a hunting party to kill the foul creature. But instead of getting a shocked reaction and the support he expects, the Lord looks at him with utter annoyance, claiming he has no time for peasant superstitions. The two men argue over the next few hours, with neither making any ground until the priest is forced to leave and face this evil alone. Now back at the rectory with the candlelight burning into the early hours, he scours through the countless archives of religious texts in a vain hope to find references to the abomination, and if possible, how to kill it. But all he finds is contradicting tales and rituals, and the town of Alnwick seems to have lost all hope. Flying into a savage rage, he decides his only option is to confront it, and by any means necessary, end its reign of terror. After a week of more bloodshed, the chaplain calls for a meeting on Palm Sunday in the parish church where he plans to rid the village of the abomination. He knows the only person who could have returned as this monstrosity was a stranger, and after assembling a group of devout followers and prominent citizens, his plan of attack laid bare, he makes it known he will not see the remainder of his flock dragged down into the pits of hell. With righteous fury, he will cast the creature back to the depths and salt whatever earth it walked upon. But what the priest doesn't know is that he will never get a chance to initiate his plan, for two brave young men blinded by revenge are already at the grave. The two brothers who lost their father to the plague. With shovel and pickaxe, their bodies covered in mud and perspiration, the two brothers work tirelessly to uncover the hideous truth buried deep within the soil. When the ground gives way and the air becomes fetid with a coppery scent of blood and rot, they find themselves staring into the abyss. For they find no coffin buried beneath the dirt, but instead a hole leading into a long-forgotten crypt. Climbing down into the pit, they soon discover the remains of the stranger's coffin at the bottom. It has been splintered into pieces and claw marks cover the surface. Clearly, when he returned as the ghoulish spectre, the thrashing and clawing of his body caused the collapse. Covering their faces from the stench, one of them ignites a torch to bring light to this layer of unbroken blue. It is clear that for centuries it has been long abandoned, but now its new occupant has called it home, for in the light, the hideous truth is laid bare for all to see. They now know where all the villagers had gone. Lining the walls like grotesque decorations of a mad king, their bodies in different stages of decay, contorted and strung up, the chewed entrails leading further into the crypt, and the ones that still have faces clearly show they died screaming. The two brothers know somewhere deep within, the body of their father lays forgotten and tossed aside like a misused toy in this labyrinth of gore. As they traverse the near endless corridors, the torch's light glistening off the moist remains of the recently buried, the fat maggots dropping from the ceiling, their hunger sated, the two brothers finally enter the main chamber of horrors and uncover the depths of the creature's greed. With its lust for blood and endless gorging, it has caused it to become so bloated and fat that it is unable to move, its stomach protruding from its body like a toad, far too heavy for its cadaverous frame. Sitting upon its throne of gore, its features puffy and covered in claret, it glares at the two men with utter hatred. Brandishing the spade like a holy lance, one of the brothers steps forth and attempts to slay the beast, but with slashing talons and a hideous screech, the creature fends off its attacker. One of the young men, seeing no other option, throws the torch at the beast, causing it to shy away from the flame. Knowing this is their only chance, they get behind the creature and with great effort pin it to the floor, the weight of its bloated stomach trapping it to the coarse stone. With a sharp thrust downwards, the spade bites into its neck, and with a twist of the blade, its vertebrae is split, and with immense effort, its head is slowly torn from its body, the sinew and muscle stretching like black vine. The brothers gag as they witness the head tear off and the once bloated body spew forth all the blood and meat it had gorged upon, and like a deflated flesh balloon, it returns to its cadaverous frame. Seizing it by the legs, they return to the entrance, and to their surprise, they see the priest and his followers staring back down at them. After climbing out of the hole and hoisting the body above ground, the priest begins to shout at the young men for being careless with their lives, but he is also full of an unnameable fear. For the creature isn't dead. He explains how to really kill it. They must remove its blackened heart, otherwise by the next night it will return and its revenge will be biblical. Seizing the shovel, the priest kicks the corpse onto its back, and with righteous fury he promised the creature, he pierces the blade into its sternum, and with a twist and a solid kick, he tears open its ribcage and exposes the still beating organ. Grabbing it with both hands, he tears the heart out of the chest cavity and presents it to the brothers to be burned. Now tightly bound, the body is dragged through the village like a grotesque trophy and eventually thrown onto the pyre. Once lit, the blaze can be seen for miles, the cleansing light pushing back the darkness that once held strong over this small village. As the smoke rises and the embers fall, the putrid and fetid air starts to become clear once more as the plague rescinds. The spirits of those lost, avenged by man's greatest discovery. And as the fire burns, the Alnwick Vampire is no more. The people of Alnwick are blissfully unaware of the grotesque monstrosity that will soon be upon them and cast their sleepy little village into utter bleakness. Big burp. This isn't the first time he has shown his violent streak. While working in the castle, the stranger has on many occasions threatened his fellow staff for neglecting their duties, even going so far to punish them himself by refusing to pay them or not read their lines properly because you're a moron. With each passing day, the priest is a town meeting is called at the local tavern where one of the With each passing day, the priest is called upon time and again by the locals, who are now in a vice-like grip of utter terror. Ah, my knee. Ow, fuck. Oh, spasm. A town meeting is called at the local tavern where one of the older locals makes it known that during one of his mouth noises, I fucking hate mouth noises. After a week of more bloodshed, the chaplain calls for a meeting on Palm Sunday in the parish church where he plans to rid the village of the abomination. He knows the only person who could have returned as this monstrosity was the stranger, and after assembling a group of devout followers and prominent citizens, he makes it known he will not see the remainder of his flocked. With righteous fury, he will cast his creature back to the depths and fuck the creature to death. You know, I'm getting better at my scripts. There is no doubt about that. They're not perfect. They can get clunky, and I'll always accept that. But I do love fucking tongue twisters. Jesus Christ. So I've just finished Two Brothers Who Lost Their Father to the Plague. Okay, here we go. Let's try to do this in one go. I bet you 20 quid I won't. Okay. This bloody chair needs WD-40, I swear. Listen to that. Fucking awful thing. With shovel and pickaxe, their bodies covered in mud and perspiration, the two brothers work tirelessly tirelessly. I am painfully dyslexic. I should not be writing and reading scripts. With shovel and pickaxe, their bodies covered in mud and perspiration, the two brothers worked tirelessly to uncover the hideous truth buried deep within the soil. I read that kinda clunky, let's try that again. With each passing day, the priest is called upon time and again by the locals who really wanna get better at this. With each passing day, the priest is called upon time and again. I'm really not focusing, I'm just staring at words, my brain's going that pulse and ooze with a thick viscous fluid, and their tongues reduced to mush. There are two pigeons fucking outside in my bin. Oh, your friendly neighbourhood pigeons are back to piss me off while I'm recording. Fuck off, there we go. Ugh, I can't stand this unprofessionalism. Don't they know who I am? No one else does. Each visit is the same as he is asked to perform final rites for their dying loved ones. Their resolve utterly... Fuck. Oh my god, I really need to stop drinking Red Bull. With each passing day, the priest is called upon time and again by the locals, who are now in a vice-like grip of utter terror. Each visit is the... Is that pigeon back? Is that bloody... Fuck off before I put you in the bloody oven. Look at that. There's a fucking... They're fucking in my bin. Where's the other one? Look, there's the other one. That one's Keith. But that one, we've called that one Keith. And that one's Karen. And they keep fucking in my bin. Get out of my fucking bin.